I've done a fair share of movie pitches and movie ideas on this channel before. I want to get back into them. I like to do a lot of writing. I like to make a lot of stories. I want to make film. That's kind of where I hope my future does go one day. So I'm going to do another movie idea or a movie pitch. And this one's going to be on Man of Steel 2. So as we all know, Man of Steel was supposed to be a movie that we were going to get featuring Henry Cavill again. There's a couple of details, very sparse details out there about what the movie would have entailed. Brainiac was going to be the main villain. We could have been in for quite the spectacle. We could also sit here and discuss for hours that maybe Man of Steel 2 should have happened before Batman vs Superman. And there are levels to me that absolutely agrees with that. What I'm going to do here and the ideas I present to you are going to be taken from the idea that this does take place after the first Man of Steel, before Batman vs Superman. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to read this entire post out for you. I screenshotted this a couple of weeks ago, maybe even a couple months ago, and I wanted to use this in a video that I thought would be suited or well fit for a video, and I finally found the perfect video to do so. It is about the fact that Superman kills Zod at the end of Man of Steel, which is something that I am absolutely more than okay with. I think it was necessary, and I think it creates a lot of good conversation, even though there are a lot of people out there who don't want to talk about it, they just want to dismiss it. But given the fact that is what happens at the end of Man of Steel, where does Clark take his actions from there? So shout out to this guy, Superman's Empire. I'm pretty sure this is Instagram, but no matter what social media this guy has, this is a fantastic statement, and it's a lot to think about. My commitment comes from faith that any being, no matter how bad or misguided, deserves to wake up the next day. Solid quote by Superman, really shows off how much of a hero he is. Even though I personally do not fully agree with this sentiment, there are levels to it that I absolutely respect. This quote is absolutely beautiful, but it also brings up the question as to whether Superman kills or not. And while he doesn't 99% of the time, it's the other 1% that really should be discussed. People often criticize Superman when he kills, claiming that any story where he kills is an invalid interpretation of the superhero. But perhaps we need to look at it from another point of view. He is the type of character that will only kill when absolutely necessary. In other words, he will do what has to be done only if he has no other option left. So who has he killed? Superman has killed General Zod, Cyborg Superman, Doomsday, Mongol, Brainiac, etc. But it is never his intention to kill when he battles an enemy. His main goal is to merely force the enemy into submission. He gives the villain a chance to stop what they are doing and realize they're in the wrong. This works, but as we know, there are some villains that refuse to change their minds about being villains. People will claim that putting Superman in a situation where he has to kill a villain is lazy writing, or that it's the easy road. But in my opinion, it's probably the complete opposite of lazy. It requires more intelligence and delicacy. At the end of the day, it comes down to letting 7.2 billion people die, along with every living organism on the planet, or killing one alien invader. The decision couldn't be more clear. It's that simple. You either let an entire planet be destroyed, or you don't. It is important to note that Superman doesn't take pleasure in killing, no matter how evil the enemy may be. He is usually shown in tremendous pain over having to kill, but sometimes it's what he has to do to protect the innocent. Not only do I flat out agree with everything that was said there, the decision is easy. You either kill one sadistic alien invading terrorist who's going to destroy and murder everything on Earth, or you literally let the latter half of what I just said there happen. But everything I just read there is what Man of Steel 2 would be about. Just as that statement says, this is a very delicate situation. We are talking about a man man with universally immense power being able to make these decisions, or better yet, having to make these decisions in the most crucial moments possible. Clark himself would be a very delicate person moving into Man of Steel 2. This entire idea I have for the film would be the entire world reacting to what has happened in Metropolis, the fact that aliens exist, and do we need a Superman on Earth? Yes, that is a lot of what Batman vs Superman did, but I feel like you could do a lot by having an entire movie dedicated to this idea. Superman is so unbelievably divisive. He's a god. No, he's not a god. Well, he's designed to be a god. Yeah, but he's still not a god. Yeah, but his powers make him look like he's a god. No, I don't like it. He's not a god. Oh, well, what is he? Yeah, precisely. It's a tug-of-war battle, and Superman is literally right in the middle of it, getting tugged to one side of being a god and tugged to the other side of not being a god. The way that the comic community argues about how Superman is portrayed and who he should be inherently, it is the arguments that would be getting played out in the film. If we are allowed to argue about who Superman is supposed to be on a daily basis, and that your take on Superman is worse than this other person's take, why can't we do that in film? Because it's what you see every day. There would be moments in this movie where you have to take him away from that pedestal. You have to remove him from that God conversation. And honestly, the last thing Clark wants is for the world to see him as a god. But unfortunately, when you make him a savior of the human race, there's no other way to put it. It is human nature to feel like he is a higher being than us. And even some of us might go a little too far and start worshiping him. There is a massive dilemma within Superman. We want him to have godlike natures where he is vastly overpowered, where he can stop any threat within the snap of his fingers, where he is capable of doing all good. But all at the same time, we want him to be human. And when you are human, you are imperfect. You make mistakes. You do things you're gonna regret. You do things that other people around you either won't respect you for or won't approve. Not only is this about what the world wants or expects from this man, it is now how Clark has to deal with these problems, how it's stressing him out, how it's making him question every single move he does, let alone fighting an alien and destroying a terrorist threat. How does that reflect on the rest of the world? How does it even reflect when he saves somebody from a car crash and flies them to a hospital? How is it going to reflect on the world when he slowly glides in front of a group of bank robbers who are indeed trying to rob a bank or fleeing from the crime scene? Everything he does, no matter how good, people are going to have their opinions and thoughts on it. The world is going to be screaming at him, "You're awesome, keep doing you," or "We hate you, we want you gone from here." You make him this almighty being. You make him this god. This now gives him the ability to make very dire and desperate decisions. You want him to be more human. You want to remove the idea of him being a godlike power. You now need to respect him when he makes decisions that maybe you wouldn't approve of. The irony of Superman is that he loves humanity so much, he actually becomes more human than we are, and he's not even truly human. Yet when he makes the greatest sacrifice he will potentially make, when he kills an alien who is hell-bent on murdering and destroying everything we have on Earth, we're then supposed to hate him? That doesn't make sense to me. If anything, Superman, somebody we want to see as human, has just made the greatest human sacrifice of all time, sacrificing his own people for us. So as Superman puts on this brave face and a bright smile, even though deep inside he's going through it, it's not a fun time, that does not mean he's free from the threat of a villain. This would obviously bring in Lex Luthor, which I do think we probably could have benefited from seeing more of him. So with a Man of Steel 2, you bring in Lex Luthor, you get to really see and understand a little bit bit more of his hatred towards Superman and what his ultimate goal would be moving forward into later films. This is going to take a ton of inspiration from a previous video I have already made about what I would do if I made a Superman movie, and it's also going to tie some connection to Batman vs Superman. I think the most obvious place you would go from here for a Man of Steel sequel is Metallo. In the destruction of Metropolis, in Lex Luthor's cleanup crew, you would have him come across a man who has received life-altering injuries. The man we saw in Batman vs Superman, Wally, who had a metal beam crash down on his legs and was resorted to a wheelchair for the rest of his life. Lex Luthor would lie to him. He would promise him almost a glory for helping him take down the Man of Steel. And what Luthor would do without his consent is he would turn him into Metallo. He would turn him into this cyborg that is now hell-bent on killing Superman. You would have Lex Luthor, who would really play up to the people who either hate Superman or are afraid and terrified of Superman, who's gonna go on these smear jobs and these smear campaigns on live television, in news articles, basically talking about how Superman is a problem. Luthor's going to continue to stoke the fire, to keep this narrative flowing of Superman bad, I good, I clean up city, Superman destroys city, I save humanity, Superman's a threat to humanity, all while Luthor is trying to gain power of his own, as he always seems to be doing so. So throughout this film, Superman does have to have a level of doubt. There needs to come a point throughout the film, maybe halfway or maybe just before the third act, where he does not really know if he should be doing this. I think the movie could benefit from having maybe one or two different flashback scenes at different ages and times in his life where he had more conversations with his father. You could even throw in Martha's perspective of it as well. Another thing you could do within this film is he could return to the Kryptonian ship to do more research and to learn more about his people. I know at this point in time the ship is covered up in a dome in the middle of the city, owned and protected by the government, but I still think there could be ways that Superman, I don't know, sneak in or literally fly through the roof of it and be like, hey, this is my people. I come from this world. I need to know more about my civilization and where I'm from. You could do something where maybe the Kryptonian ship has some sort of backup file option, and when you use it, Jor-El comes back through some sort of means where he can speak with his son again, and maybe Kal can get more perspective on what he should do in this situation and what Jor-El always sent him to do there in the first place. Now, of course, this movie's not devoid of action and big battle sequences. You would get many instances of it throughout the film. Of course, the big fight's gonna be when Superman comes across kryptonite, what it's going to do to him and how he's going to react to it through the chest of Metallo. I mean, that's the OG way of handling it with Metallo. You could also do other things where his eyes are possibly kryptonite as well. So every time Superman's looking at Metallo, that death stare is always coming for him. And I think during the fight, what I would do is I would have Metallo specifically bring Superman to the destroyed part of Metropolis. And because Superman is not used to kryptonite, he's in a moment where he's getting clobbered like he's never been before, and he doesn't know how to react to this green substance that's making him so weak. Metallo is throwing him around, punching him through destroyed buildings and rubble, bringing him almost on this small adventure of, during the destruction of Metropolis with the world terraformer, what Metallo himself was going through in those moments. Like, this is where my family died. This is where a building crumbled on my legs and took my ability to walk forever. This is where I saw people get sucked up into the gravity well and then crash back down onto Earth dead. These are the horrors I had to see that day, and this is where I will kill you. And while their fight goes on, this is where Lois may not have the most definitive proof out there, but she has some sort of proof that this is all Lex Luthor's doing. He is the one who has created Metallo, and the man who is Metallo already has a pre-registered hatred for Superman. So it's pretty much a win-win for each side. Lex Luthor gains the publicity he needs and also creates somebody who can kill Superman for him. And then the person, if you want to take it from Batman vs Superman, the Wally guy already has his own reasons to take Superman down. And then eventually, as Superman finds a way to combat the kryptonite somehow, this is where he would get the upper hand of the battle and where he would defeat Metallo. And that's where the biggest question of the outcome of this battle comes in. How does he solve this? Does he find a way to subdue him? Or does he kill him? Because the version of Metallo I'm thinking of is he's all robot right up until his brain. He still has an organic human brain in there. Is it moral or unmoral? Ethical or unethical? Good or bad? Right or wrong? What does he do? And frankly, I don't really think there is a right or wrong situation here. I think there's a certain conversation to be had that someone could say, dude, he's not a human anymore. Is he really worth the life that he's living? He's just a brain in a walking metal body. Is that life in the first place? Just kill him. But there's also another conversation to be had that no matter how little organic there is to him, there is still something of a human being presence within that body. It still has memories. It still knows or thinks to be human. And then from Superman's side, from his perspective of things, is Metallo that big of a threat that if I didn't kill him right now, he would go across the world and murder everything and everyone? That would be a big conversation to have, and honestly I think gets the brain juices going. It gets you thinking. It creates conversation and ideas. This is where you would have Superman realize, no, I can't kill him. I cannot kill a human. Once again, I do think there is a very specific level at which Superman would have to kill a human. If that human was going around doing what General Zod was doing, there's no doubt in my mind you have to do it. From this particular situation, I think Superman would see Metallo as a broken man, someone who has suffered. He would feel pity and mercy for him. He would know he can't kill him. And I think maybe in this situation, what you would do, Superman would have to use all of the strength he possibly can, take the kryptonite out of his chest, rip it out, and maybe that powers down Metallo. He's still alive, but he's got no energy to keep his body moving. Kal learns what it means to be Kryptonian. We pretty much discovered that in the first Man of Steel. But this movie would be about, I know what it means to be Kryptonian. I have these powers for a reason. By the end of the film, he would fully understand what it means to be human. He would now understand the essence of humanity. He knows the values of good and bad. He knows to be human means to be imperfect, and that sometimes you are going to make mistakes and you're going to do things that will stay with you for the rest of your life. But he also knows that means he can always be better the next day. And then in very generic superhero fashion, you could make an end credit scene that brings Batman into the fold, but that's not what I would do. I would have the movie end with Batman, and that pretty much inspires the next film, which would be Batman vs Superman. At this point in time, that movie would have to change things. You've explored more of the reality of Superman in this film, so the plot would somewhat have to change in the next movie, but you could still keep certain things the same. So there you go, guys. That is what I would do with Man of Steel 2. As you guys can probably tell, the ethical nature of who Superman is really interests me. I like the idea of Superman needing to be morally challenged and not always having the right or the wrong answers. It's just what is right for humanity. But within saying that, he still needs to have his own morals. He needs to look out for himself as well. You let me know in the comments down below what you thought of this and what some of your ideas would have been for Man of Steel 2. So with that being said, that is all I have for this video, everyone. And until next time, I will talk to you all very soon.